It all started in November 2021. Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about the Eric Bischoff CM Punk scuffle on Twitter. And we may even go into the peanut gallery a little bit because I've seen some absolutely ridiculous things said on both sides. But like I said, it all began in November 2021. In the media scum, media scum, not the scrum. The media are scum, so I'm going to say media scum. AEW Full Gear. CM Punk made this statement. He says, quote, "I don't know if everybody who was a WWE fan came over here specifically just to watch me, but what I recognize in front of an AEW audience is an audience that I used to wrestle in front of prior to coming to WWE. They're wrestling fans, you know? And I will never understand the criticism of appealing to your fan base. If this is our fan base, give them what they want and everybody's happy. Now I understand building a business, but people talk about trying to get casuals here. I don't think there's casual wrestling fans anymore." This has led to a lot of people making comments about AEW's appealing to a casual fan base. How are they going to grow their business, especially when they claim they're going to be a competitor to WWE, which is chiefly the only reason I care about this subject. I don't care if AEW has 500,000 fans or a million or 1,500. The idea is they talk, and they meaning not only AEW, but also the wrestlers, Tony Khan, journalism, the fans. Everybody is comparing AEW to WWE. WWE is largely casual fans. Everybody knows that. At the same time, AEW wants to be a competitor while appealing to a smaller fan base. That makes no sense. And it's not smart business. So if AEW truly wants to be a competitor, they have to appeal to the same fan base that WWE appeals to. They're going to have to actually grow the business. Now, because of this commentary has been floating around for a while. We just did a video with PW Torch talking about the casual fans and all that kind of stuff. This is when Eric Bischoff decided to respond to, now it took him several months. It's May 9th when Eric Bischoff actually replies to what CM Punk has to say. Now in the tweet, we're going to go through the tweet and through what he says on his podcast because we got them both right here. So Eric Bischoff says, quote, "Better storytelling equals growth. If AEW ever wants to get the other 900 fans in the room, they'll need to stop booking for one small segment of the audience." Now here is what he said on the podcast.
You put 1,000 people in a room that identify as wrestling fans.
Yes.
1,000 people. Of that 1,000 people, 10% of them are going to be hardcore wrestling fans. So let's define what a hardcore wrestling fan is for the purpose of this conversation, because everybody will have a different opinion. My definition of a hardcore wrestling fan,
watch every week,
is somebody that's watching every week,
yes,
that's following it on social media, that's investing time, communicating with others, on Reddit or whatever the case may be. People that are just immersed in what's going on.
All right, so this brings me back to what Raven had to say about fans. Raven did a shoot interview. I forget, it was several years ago. And he made a comment about the hardcore fan base. I think he just called them the marks or something like that. And he says, imagine how much of a fan you have to be to watch something on TV. You watch it whenever it's on. You make sure that you're there to watch it. And he says that could be a large number of people. He said, then imagine the amount of people who actually pay to go see it live. And then he says, imagine then the number of people who not only watch it on TV, not only pays to go see it live, but they buy merchandise. Then he says, take it to the next level. You watch it on TV, you go and see it live, you bought merchandise. Now you're talking to other people about it. You're discussing it over the water cooler. You're having friends over to talk about it or whatever. And then it goes further and further steps until you're writing letters about it. You're sending letters to the radio station or to the television station about it. He says every level is a smaller and smaller group of people. And that you can transport that idea, even though it was, I think, before Twitter was even a thing. But you can transport that idea to modern day. Now, a lot more people interact with wrestling on Twitter, and they don't tweet about the show at all. I've seen a lot of accounts that will tweet about wrestling maybe once or twice a month. something happens and they're like, oh, this thing occurred. If Hulk Hogan is trending, they'll talk about it. Or I've seen political commentators, people bring up Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair or something like that. It happens. So that just tells you how ubiquitous wrestling is in the mainstream. As far as people who don't even talk about wrestling sometimes talks about wrestling. So I wouldn't count them among wrestling fans. But there's a lot of people who live in that bubble, and they think that either everybody is like them, which is not true, or they underestimate how much they get involved with wrestling. Now, when I talked about the casual fans, I kind of said that a lot of people who talk about it on Twitter don't actually watch the show. And because they don't watch the show, they're basically just window shopping. And to me, watching the show is the least that you could do, because it's the bare effing minimum in order to engage with the show is to actually watch it, to have an opinion on something that you actually watched. It's easy to have an opinion on something you have never seen, because you're just going to use your opinion. It's basically the cobbled up opinion of other people. And I've had conversation with those folks too. But that's just to get my personal, what I think about the hardcore fans out there. Let's get back into what Bischoff has to say.
10% of that 1,000 people are going to be that fan.
Yeah.
90% of the people are going to be people that watch occasionally, once a month, twice a month. They'll check out the big pay-per-views. They'll get excited about WrestleMania. They'll maybe go to a house show, a WWE live event once, twice a year, maybe. I'd rather have 900 of those people to build my business on and appeal to than 100 of those people who are so invested in my shit. And you can't appeal to those 900 out of 1,000 people that are considered to be casual wrestling fans.
Well,
people that enjoy wrestling, they'll watch it when they're home. If there's not something else on television that's, maybe during the NFL on Monday Night Football, you're going to probably lose that audience, which WWE does. Typically, every year when NFL starts, WWE takes a hit. But their core audience is still significant enough because they've appealed to those 900 people and not to the 100 people.
Eric,
so Conrad is trying to cut him off, but he's on point so far. The 100 people. I will throw AEW some bail here. The 100 people are very, very important, in so much as when you're first starting a business, and AEW is still technically a startup, it's like 3 years in, you want to cultivate a fan base as much as possible. You want to actually make sure that there are people who are on your side, who are not, floating back and forth. They ride or die with you. Okay. That's what you want to do at first. AEW kind of came in with that. And the issue that we're going to get into is that it doesn't seem like those people have stuck around. But let's finish this up. It's probably about another 20 seconds in the clip.
Let me finish. And the creative that you embrace and you use as your strategy, if the design of your creative is to appeal to those 100 people, you're never going to get the 900.
So he said it. He was clear as crystal. I don't need to, further elaborate. I think that he pretty much told the truth in that spot. So a account on Twitter called Backup Hangman retweeted Eric Bischoff's clip. We're going to get into what he said when we get into the peanut gallery portion of this thing. But CM Punk responded to Backup Hangman by saying wrestling Twitter needs to stop amplifying all the old head, bad faith, bad take, carny dipshits. They had their moment in the sun. Let them die in the dark with their ego podcasts. Quote me. And Eric Bischoff then decided to absolutely clubber CM Punk by using CM Punk's own words. Eric Bischoff quoted CM Punk saying the most delusional stuff that he's ever said from several weeks ago. He says, okay. And then he used the quote, so I'm not Hogan or Savage, Daniel Bryan, and Adam Cole. They're not the outsiders. I see the parallels, but this is totally different. I'll go ahead and say it, and people can quote me, and they'll be pissed off about it. But to me, this is bigger. And then Eric Bischoff says, how is that working out? So people are absolutely angry. Got so mad. So mad. The AEW fan base started trying to defend AEW as they tend to do. As far as Bischoff taking off CM Punk's head, if you look at the likes and the retweets and everything, CM Punk's his comment was far more popular than Bischoff's. But that's because he has a lot of sycophants, hitting the heart button. He hit the heart button regardless. But Bischoff continues. He says, "Let's look at what Punk has delivered since debuting in AEW." It says August Rampage, 1.1 million viewers. Now lucky to hit 500,000. Dynamite, 1.17 million. Now lucky to break 900,000. Pretty lame for a guy who thinks he's a bigger deal than Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Randy Savage. Oh, and then of course there were some other bullets that were tossed out of that gun about CM Punk not being able to fight in the UFC fight and everything. It's pretty wild. Now, I want to again throw AEW some bail. The Rampage numbers from the 5:30 show were pretty damn bad. They were awful. Now, the only reason to even discuss this, even though we could just write it off as an aberration, the reason why we would discuss Rampage doing very, very bad is that Rampage has done very bad every time they left 10 o'clock. Now, I was told that Rampage was suffering due to the fact that it was on at 10 o'clock. I've seen so many people, I've argued with wrestling journalists, I've argued with AEW fans, I've argued with all of these people who have said Rampage is on at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. Of course, not a lot of people are going to watch it. Of course, not a lot of people are going to see it. They're not going to stay up to watch it. They're going to go out. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And so Rampage has come on at 7 o'clock before SmackDown. It didn't do well. It's come on at 5:30 and on a Friday. It didn't do well. It's been bumped to Saturdays. It didn't do well. It's the creative at that point. It's not like moving the time slot made Rampage better or worse. Usually it does worse when you move it from the 10 o'clock hour. So there's really no excuse. Like you have to ask yourself, what is the reason? Also, the information about what Dynamite has done in terms of ratings over the last year since CM Punk came in. Now, he hasn't been there a year yet, but it's been about 7 or 8 months. And I said, give it 6 months or so. That was my thing when he first showed up. I said, give it 6 months. We've given it 7 or 8. It's not good. It ain't good. It ain't. His segments do very well. And that's why he's, and when I say he, I mean CM Punk. A lot of the stars, their segments do very well. Which is why they try to keep them on screen as long as possible. The MJF CM Punk storyline, it was milked, because of CM Punk being at least a ratings draw to the average person because they know who he is from WWE. And they have tried to keep that up. Unfortunately, not everybody on the roster is the same way. They kind of wasted that Bryan Danielson. They don't let him do anything. They don't really let Jon Moxley do anything. So these are guys that people would know from WWE. So AEW have started to lose viewers. Yes, it's true. Dynamite usually gets about 800 to 1 million people. Over the last several weeks, it's been under 900, I think. I think it's been either a little over 900 or under 900. A lot of people have said this is the NBA playoffs and that sort of thing, which is entirely possible. I'm not going to be a person that's going to say that stuff doesn't matter. It does matter. People have options, and the more options people have, the more people are going to, indulge in those options. Sure, if your audience is a hardcore fan base, as AEW proclaims that it is, you would expect your hardcore fans to support you over the NBA, but that's not entirely what occurs. But it wasn't too long ago that, the wrestling journalist class and everyone was saying that Dynamite was going to surpass SmackDown or was going to surpass Raw. It was going to beat Raw in the ratings, especially during football season, because WWE fans are going to watch football and not watch Raw. And, I think they had to change that from from they're going to beat Raw in the ratings to they're going to have to beat them in the 18-49 at a specific point in time in order for that to be true. It was ridiculous. But CM Punk should not have responded to Eric Bischoff, should not have said anything. He really should not have said anything because he didn't say anything disparaging about AEW other than they need to broaden their appeal. That's all Bischoff said, is broaden your appeal. You know, when Cody was there, that's what Cody was trying to do. And yes, we laughed at it because a lot of it was poorly done. You know, the Mike Tyson stuff when Mike Tyson was yawning on TV, the Cody saving racism, you know, that kind of stuff. But it was him trying to broaden the fan base. You know, the stuff with Shaquille O'Neal, it was hilarious. We get it. But it was AEW trying to broaden their fan base. He was trying to grow the business in typical WWE fashion because that's what Cody has, you know, that's what Cody was raised in. He was raised in that system where, yes, we bring in celebrities, you know, and celebrities bring in eyeballs. You know, he learned it from Dusty. He learned it from Vince. He brought it to AEW. And it worked for a time. You know, it had some really hilarious results, but he was doing something a little bit different. Now, I think that it's be fair to cut AEW into sections. The Cody section, when he was probably one of the more dominant voices in the company, and you can look at it and tell. And now to the Ring of Honor guys section, where, you know, the Cody and the Bucks and CM Punk and all those guys have essentially taken over the creative. Even though we know that Tony Khan is the one making the final decisions, a lot of the stuff that's coming out of there is, you know, Punk's vision, Danielson's vision, those guys. It's a different AEW, you know, so their AEW is not doing so well. It ain't doing great, you know, but the fans continue to hold on. So let's go into the peanut gallery and look at this thing. We're going to start with Hollywood Hangman, which is the account that retweeted Eric Bischoff in the first place that started this whole thing. It says, I argue that WCW catered more to the hardcore fan and tried to keep them happy by not devaluing beloved babyfaces and doing more with their great undercard. They would have staved off the precipitous decline they had in '99. Their wrestlers were greater than WWF's, and they didn't take advantage. This is when CM Punk decided to respond to that statement. Saying WCW catered more to the hardcore wrestling fan is a bit of a misnomer because when the Lucha Libre segments, and everybody will tell you this, did not do great when it comes to ratings. They were basically there as time fillers. The people were there purely for the NWO and what Hulk Hogan was doing. That was the casual fan because the casual fans were into Hulk Hogan, and now Hulk Hogan had turned heel, and they were very interested in that. Not necessarily into Psychosis versus Rey Mysterio. They weren't necessarily there. You can go back and watch some of those matches, and those guys, they were getting great crowd reactions on their big spots, but that's about it. You know, very few of them were getting like really great reactions as they came down the chute. You know, as they came out of the tunnel, very few of them really got really big responses. Now they got over in the matches because they were having these fantastic matches, but it didn't really translate to merchandise or ratings on TV or anything like that. So that was the difference. That WCW was very top heavy. You know, the guys who had a history of drawing were the ones who were drawing, and they were carrying everyone else upwards, and they were peppered throughout the show. Just like in WWE, when Austin and Rock got hot, they would pepper them throughout the show. So you had to watch Naked Midian and Viscera and all those other garbage individuals to see what Steve Austin and The Rock was going to be doing for the rest of the night. It wasn't a guarantee that they were going to have one segment on this show. You watch that one segment and you could turn away. You know, both Raw and Nitro utilized a very useful tactic, and that is in peppering the stars throughout the show. You never know when Austin or when Rock was going to show back up. You know, you never knew when the NWO was going to come back. And because of that, people stayed engaged with the show. They just watched whatever came with it. You could have put Big Boss Man versus Test in the middle of the ring. people are sitting there glued. They're okay. These guys are on screen, or they're in person or whatever. That's fine, but we're kind of just waiting for Rock or Austin or Mankind or somebody else to do something, you know. And Psychosis and Rey Mysterio and all those guys were basically in that position because they weren't being pushed upwards, you know. So they were just mid carders. You know, it is what it is. But this became a huge, huge thing. So this Hollywood Hangman guy continues. Bischoff going out sad. He can't be this dumb. It's a grift. And he's not the only one. You're not wrong, Punk. Plus, these segments crumble when met with any scrutiny. Talk about good storytelling like you and MJF didn't tell a very well plotted out and layered story across multiple months. And then it naturally dovetails to he and Wardlow. My brother calls people like this chatters. The United Center was sold out instantly. WCW had to give away tickets for free consistently for their last 3 years. The last 3 years, so the last 3 years will be from 98 to 2001. Now, 98 is probably one of their hotter years because 97 was pretty big. It was the biggest year I think WCW had. But 98 was pretty big too. You know, I think they kind of had a stumble in late 98. I think that's when they took the belt from Goldberg. But we're talking about here, WCW reaching the highest of the highs. I'm talking like the absolute highest of the highs in terms of the wrestling industry. It's pretty funny too. That being said, the MJF CM Punk story was a good layered story across several months. Everybody agrees to that. You know, there was some lulls here and there because the story probably went on a little too long, but it was a good story. The problem is it was only one. It was the only one. It was only one story, and you have 3 hours of TV in order to fill. You know, what else a good story was being told at that time? You know, there weren't any. There weren't any other good stories going on at that one time. WCW, at the very least, had to have multiple stories. Like I said, yes, it was the NWO carrying things. But then on the undercard, you still had some fun stuff going on. You had guys like Jericho. You had stuff like the Guerrero Civil War at one point. You had Goldberg and his winning streak. You had Raven and the Flock and all of their stuff they had going on. All of this was episodic TV that was utilizing similar characters that people recognized, that people saw last week, and they were building upon what they were doing this week. And these things, to some people, were engaging. Now, yes, a lot of this was mid-card stuff, and we wasn't expecting this to draw the audience. We were just using them to maintain the audience. And they successfully did so. Does AEW do this? It's like guys disappear for weeks on end. Just take the House of Black thing for a while. It's been going on for like 6 months. Buddy Matthews has not had a single wrestling match on Dynamite. He has not had one. And he's been there this whole time. All of the hubbub about bringing this guy in, he has not had a singles match on Dynamite. And I think the only match he's ever had on TV, period, has been a 6-man tag. This has been going on forever. Like, not only that, but then the cryptic nature of the promos, people don't understand the mission statement of the House of Black. What are their goals? What are they doing and why? And then, of course, they've been feuding with Death Triangle. And then all of those months, Phoenix was injured. You know, you had Penta or Scudo, and nobody understood where that came from or where that's going. It was just a lot of that stuff going on. All Bischoff is saying is tighten up your storytelling. And these people are absolutely losing their minds. It's absolutely ridiculous. So let's continue. This guy asks a pretty good several questions. He says, when does something register as a valid critique? Or does even my point just get the blanket dismissal of either A, what about WWE? B, shut the fuck up, boomer Cornette stooge. C, IWC touch grass. D, you're not wrong but won't cite how. F, you're just not able to understand it. Or G, get the fuck out, E-drone. That's all of the AEW responses in one tweet. That's every response that you have when you criticize AEW in one tweet. What about WWE? You're a Cornette stooge, you're old, or whatever. you're a geek, go touch grass, or you just don't understand that you're not a higher enough IQ because we are smarter than you, or you're an e-drone, shut up. I mean, none of these are arguments, by the way. It just is what it is. It says, and meanwhile, AEW can't get 1 million viewers to watch their boring drivel. It says, translation, I feel inferior that my version of wrestling only appeals to a tiny group of virgins who live with their mother, so I'm going to lash out at those 10 times more successful than me. This was a response to CM Punk. It says, factually, they did average, AEW, I'm guessing they did average of 1 million viewers in Q1 this year. Give them their flowers. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not so sure. Somebody said, when somebody talked about the 833,000 people, somebody says because of the playoffs in the NHL, the reasons for WWE's drop off, which was about 400 to 500,000 people. And then somebody goes into their crate of excuses. This is hilarious. I got a CM Punk crying meme with his face painted in an AEW hoodie. I'm going to put it on the screen. It's fucking hilarious. It's very good. It's very well drawn. You're 43 years old talking about old heads. He said, you think 43 years old is old in wrestling. It's old in 99% of sports. Wrestling is pretty much the only, wrestling in Hollywood. It's the only things where at 43 you're still, considered in good enough shape to do your own stunts. Try to find me a football player at 43 or a basketball player at 43. Again, they churn out 22-year-old boys that's washed up. So at 43, you'll be hard pressed. It'll probably take you 2 hands to find football players who still active in their 40s. If you have to use both hands, but you won't find many. And you certainly won't find many at a high level. Somebody says, you think 43 years old in wrestling. And the response was, it used to be. Now it's filled with old, pathetic men like Punk and the Hardys, and especially 63-year-old Sting. Wow. That's just mean. Sting ain't done nothing to you. That's just mean. So another guy says, AEW's entire presentation is just a ripoff of Nitro. The look of the show, the interviews, and the aisle, if they are going to pride themselves on being so original and so much better than WCW, then maybe they should stop trying to recreate it. Everything AEW does, WCW did first. And I think most people who are intelligent people will say that AEW did that by design. That they wanted to have a WCW sort of appeal, because that's the audience that they wanted to appeal to. They wanted to appeal to the WCW audience. Now, WCW had a lot of silly stuff in it, though. Glacier, Wrath, Mortis. Now, AEW did too. Luchasaurus, Sonny Kiss, Joey Janela, Michael Nakazawa, his baby oil. There was a lot of weird stuff going on. So maybe it is the spiritual successor to WCW, but then again, so was TNA. TNA also was the spiritual successor to WCW, and you see how that turned out. So I don't want to get too far into this whole thing, but I want to highlight a tweet from Disco Inferno, because to me, this tweet was worthy of its own video, but I'm going to fold it into here because I think it's very important. And I think that it pretty much encapsulates the problem. So Disco Inferno says, the biggest problem in wrestling is how the wrestling media draws people that repel fans from the product. I mean, there's a serious nerd, socially awkward vibe that umbrellas the business right now, and it turns away potential fans. Dirt sheets drive this narrative. And he's correct. Disco Inferno says a lot of stuff. Sometimes he's missing, but this was a hit. The wrestling journalist class, they do, in their desire to see, and oftentimes they're friends of friends, or that's just their general bias. And I haven't seen a media class outside of Washington, D.C., that is so ensconced in what they do. There's like half the wrestling media are people who try to be in wrestling. I mean, John Alba, he's a manager. Sean Ross Sapp was doing a heel thing recently, I think at a GCW show. Like, there's so many people in wrestling media that want to be in wrestling themselves. They not detached enough away from the product. Therefore, they will overhype things that don't need to be overhyped. And then they frustrate all the people who are kind of casual fans because they don't see this as being the greatest thing ever or the best thing ever or anything like that. They just look at it as, what is this? Why is this occurring? And then you get attacked for questioning it. Like the guy who didn't know about CM Punk's, ROH theme song. Like that guy wasn't really even a casual. He was a hardcore wrestling fan, but he had some blind spots in his hardcore wrestling fandom, which we all do. We all have blind spots. We don't know the indies that well, or maybe we weren't watching WWE for a period of time, or maybe we weren't born during the Attitude Era, or something like that. We all have those kind of things. And CM Punk attacked the guy. So if you are a casual fan and you see like, oh, I didn't know this, and this is how they respond to people who don't know things, they just want to rip you apart, then yeah, I would see how that would be off-putting. Things like, that was kind of like Orange Cassidy, which wrestling media really, really, really pushed upon people. Yeah, I can see how that would repel a person who, even if they were interested in the fake fighting aspect of it, when a guy stops to do these obviously fake shin kicks and you don't tear his head off or anything like that, I see how people might say, oh, this is just stupid and not want to watch it anymore. Just like I understand that sometimes, people see things like the Cobra or the Worm in WWE and it can be like, this ain't cool. I don't want to watch this. But the WWE fan base has no problem accepting that. The AEW fan base just tells you to shut up, go touch grass. Wrestling can be fun. This is fun wrestling because we said so. This is fun. When Orange Cassidy does his thumbs up thing and doesn't really do much of anything. Oh, wrestling can be fun. Look at Hook and Danhausen. They're having fun. When it's a 24/7 title thing and they're doing silly stuff, this is the stupid stuff that turns off people. It's this hive mind that, all of it's dumb. All of it is dumb. And if I was booking a show, none of it would be there. But I take the bitter with the sweet. It is what it is. But I'm also not a maniac. If AEW was doing gangbusters and 2 million viewers every week or something like that, and they were crushing Raw and SmackDown and selling a ton of merchandise and all that shit, I wouldn't have anything to say. I'd be like, well, obviously they're doing something right. But clearly if they're going backwards and they're slipping in audience, something is wrong. Something is going wrong. And it's easy to say it's the playoffs, it's, NHL, it's this, it's that. But those Rampage numbers are absolutely abysmal. And somebody needs to have a sit down with Tony Khan to discuss that. They need to have a sit down to discuss what's going on with those Rampage numbers and why this is going on. Some guy says Punk has also delivered year-over-year growth in ratings, year-over-year growth in merch sales, year-over-year growth in ticket sales, and last I checked, AEW is still in business. I guess that must be pretty lame. Well, year-over-year growth in ratings, I think, has been disproven, from when you look at year-over-year ratings. I think they've done it 2 or 3 times. That viewership is down and the 18 to 49 is down. Now, ticket sales, maybe. Now, I think the ticket sales have been... But they keep doing shows in these very specific markets where they know they can sell out very quickly, Chicago being one of them. And they're doing very well in certain areas when it comes to ticket sales, but not everywhere. Not everywhere. And they're not having the best shows in the world either. And they're not telling great stories. Like, all of this began because Eric Bischoff just told them to tighten up their creative. That's how we got all of this stuff. We got all of this stuff because people just said, hey, tighten up your creative, appeal to a lot more people, and, that's all you need to do. And everybody's just now jumping all over Eric Bischoff as if he said, that CM Punk needs to have sex with his mom on TV or something like that. It's like, no, he didn't say anything like that. All he said was, tighten up your creative. That's all he said. So this was another pretty good exchange here. I'm not highlighting the funny ones. I'm highlighting good exchanges because I'm interested in the debate around this. So somebody responded to CM Punk saying, "You're just described yourself to an absolute T. AEW isn't perfect, and pretending it is perfect is doing a lot more harm than good. It needs to grow." And what Eric said about AEW catering to the fans they already have instead of the fans that they can attract is absolutely correct. Somebody responded to this guy saying, "Right, I guess AEW should call up Logan Paul, since that's how you, quote, broaden your audience." So the other guy responds again, "You take the piss, but he just featured on one of the most watched WrestleManias of all time. And don't pretend AEW didn't try that with Tyson and Shaq." So then somebody else jumps in and says, "Quality matters more than popularity. Celebrity appearances are always the worst parts of WrestleMania. AEW needs to work on its quality, not increasing the amount of viewers." Talk about absolutely, positively delusional tweets. Quality matters over popularity. I'm telling you, you don't understand. Quality is subjective. That's the one thing people don't understand. It's every single medium that has to do with creative. People who are the worst at it are usually the most popular. I remember being a kid. I was 15 when No Limit Records blew up. It was like 98, 99. I hated every single thing No Limit did, but it did not stop them from selling records. Were they good rappers? Not really. Mystical was all right. What's the name? Silk the Shocker, easily, still today, one of the worst rappers I have ever heard. Sold millions of records. I don't understand why. I don't understand it. He is terrible. Master P was awful. It was No Limit being played on the radio almost all the time is one of the reasons why I stopped listening to the radio. It's subjective. It was hot for that time. Most people, you ask them today, a lot of those artists were not jumping. People still didn't play that stuff today. 10 years later, most of that stuff was in the dustbin and people weren't paying it no attention, but they made tons of fucking money. Quality is subjective. A lot of it is marketing. A lot of it is visibility. A lot of it is charisma. Can you really get people to buy into into what you're doing? And No Limit was able to successfully do that. They've sold more records, No Limit, than most of my favorite rappers. It does not change the fact that I fucking hate No Limit and they're garbage. Quality does not fucking matter. I dare somebody listen to a Mia X album today. I dare you. Who the fuck wants to do that? But back in 99 or 2000, that's what people did. They bought every fucking thing that No Limit had, that damn stamp was on. They bought it. You know, because it was hot at the time. Quality is subjective. It's absolutely subjective. There have been people who are great artists, can't sell a fucking thing. Great actors who will never be in a great movie because they'll never actually get cast, and there'll be 100 different reasons why they wouldn't. You do have to broaden your appeal. You know, that just is what it is. Quality, you know, people, you can increase your quality once you broaden your appeal. You know, get people interested in your stuff first, and then you can do good quality shit. You know, and I'm not saying that No Limit didn't care about quality. What I'm saying is their version of quality wasn't good enough for me. I didn't think it was good. There was a lot of other people who didn't think it was good either. But we were drowned out by all the other people who said, "I like this song. I want to buy this song. I want to listen to this album, yada, yada, yada." We got drowned out. And it's okay to be on the losing side of this argument. A lot of people hate the WWF. They hated the Attitude Era. They were WCW fans. You have to take it on the chin that WWF won the war. You got to take it on the chin. Same thing with TNA. There's a lot of hardcore TNA fans. Oh, for this blankety blank amount of time, TNA was better than WWE. It's like, okay, why is TNA in the situation it's in right now, though? You know, like you have to be able to tighten up, broaden your appeal, grow your fucking fan base. That's all we're asking AEW to do, is to broaden their fan base. How would they go about doing that? I don't know. They've been trying to do it by bringing in guys from the WWE. It's worked to a degree. It's worked enough, but at the same time, it's not good enough because you're not getting people who don't watch wrestling to watch wrestling. You're not filling the void WCW left. You're not filling it. And that's what they came out of the woodwork to do. I didn't say that. They said it. They were the ones who were coming back to get the lapsed fans. Now they're saying there is no lapsed fans. Now they're saying there is no casuals. I don't get it. Make up your mind. I think this tweet was a very good one. It says, I don't really understand why everyone gets so mad when he says he wants to see the company grow. He's not saying the company is trash or no one watches it. He's just saying they need to find a way to grab another million fans. And he's giving his opinion on how and why. That seems to be so true. It's basic blanket advice that people are absolutely losing their minds over. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Why are you so upset at his very mild critique of AEW? This is one of the mildest critiques there is. I don't get it. He's not saying that they have a garbage show or that Tony Khan's a terrible booker. I've said stuff like that. Other people have said stuff like that. Bischoff is purely saying, hey, here's how you can grow your business and make your business a little bit more successful. And people are like, hey, Bischoff is a dinosaur. He needs to go away and die. Hey, wait a minute. Hold on. This is a problem. It's very, very mild response. I see some people utilizing the Brandon Thurston tweet without recognizing that there is a tangential relationship between WrestleNomics and AEW. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but it's a fact, that Brandon Thurston is actually good friends with some higher ups in AEW. This goes back to what I said before about the wrestling media being very, very ensconced in the independents and in AEW. Every time I say that, people get the stupefied face. And I'm telling you, it is an octopus, the wrestling media, that they are the tastemakers and the guys who tell you who's good and who isn't. WWE is stupid for letting this guy go because that guy is a friend of theirs. It could just be a source. He could be a source for stories or whatever. But most of the time it is legitimately these folks are friendly. They've hung out in the locker rooms with these guys. And that's just kind of how it is. So you see that they'll be unnecessarily harsh on people they have no relationship with, which is why they're so hard on people in NXT. If somebody botches something in NXT and they came from football or something like that, they're very, very harsh on them. Somebody come from the independents, fall all over the place. They are, hell, hey, give them a chance. It's that kind of stuff. Even little stuff like that really drives home that the wrestling media is, full of shit. Now, I skipped this one. I kind of missed this. But we got to go back to the tweet that says AEW's entire presentation is a ripoff of Nitro. Then he gives some examples. He says, working relationship with AAA, WCW did it first. Working relationship with New Japan, WCW did it first. Fast-paced cruiserweight style action, WCW did it first. Owen Hart tribute, WCW did it first with the Bret Hart versus Benoit. Dynamite Diamond Ring, WCW Battle Bowl Ring. Beach Break, Beach Blast. Ooh. There were some more too, weren't they? I know they took a lot of ideas from WCW. They did. And he gave some pretty good examples. I don't know about the Owen Hart tribute thing, but it is what it is. So I think we can call it right here. Let me know what you guys think about all of this nonsense. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.